So picture this. It's one of your first days of work and you're talking with a new colleague and you can't really seem to strike up a good conversation to talk with them. But then you can't help to notice a picture of a band you like on her desk. And so you strike up a conversation about the band and the two of you hit it off. Right there, you've used interpersonal perception. And throughout the speech, I will include how the importance of interpersonal perception and how you can effectively communicate in the workplace using it. I've done some minor research on this, and I've included work from other people who have done a lot of research in this field as well. Throughout the speech, I will define perception, interpersonal perception, and what exactly it is, and then I will talk about how you can recognize that perception when you're at work, and then lastly, I will talk about how you can use that effectively and appropriately in the workplace. So defining perception. My definition of perception is when you use the five senses to take in information when communicating with someone. And the book DeVito has broken down into five stages of stimulation, organization, interpretation, evaluation, memory, and recall. So to go through those stages, the first stage of stimulation is when you're using your senses and you're collecting the information. You have selective attention and selective exposure, which combine to make selective perception. And secondly, organization is when you're organizing the information in your brain and you start to put it into different groups. One of them could be proximity, when you think two things are close together in physicalness, so you group them together. So if you see like a couple together, they would be in a proximity relationship. And then you have similarity and contrast. And similarity is when two things you think look alike, so you automatically group them together. And then contrast would be the opposite. So you think two things are different, and you automatically put those in a group of differences. Next is interpretation and evaluation. It's actually two different processes, but they're considered to be together. It's usually influenced by culture and other things such as experiences, needs, wants, values, beliefs, gender, and personality. But a lot of people can get real tricky and clingy in this stage, because that's where you can run into stereotyping and being ethnocentric. The fourth step is memory, and it's when you take the stuff from the interpretation and evaluation stage and store it in your memory. But this is when you can also link one aspect of someone into stereotyping. So say one guy, you have a stereotype of athletes and how they're stupid and they're mean. And so you find out that one person's an athlete and you automatically assume that they're stupid and mean, and you put them in that stereotype. Lastly is the last stage is recall. And this is when if like something was brought up again, you access that memory, and it talks about how memory is not reproductive. And so a lot of times when you recall memories, you like to recall it in the way that you believe or that you want to do. And then that can lead to a lot of misinformation. So now, knowing what perception is, we can now go into recognizing perception while in the workplace. When you're recognizing perception, try to be self-aware and aware of misleading information. And so Hofner has said that communication is actually, that we take in, is 20% fact that we think, and 80% of it is based on the relationship you have with that person. And they come up with the idea of the 4 ears. So there's the first ear is the factual, so like what are they actually saying, what information are you actually taking in. Second is self-reveal, like what are they really saying, and what do they really mean, so I kind of like the underlying meaning behind stuff. And then third is the affiliation, how is someone like dealing with you. So a lot of people can get caught up in this and be like people that are really get offended easily, or people that are very defensive usually cling to this. And then fourth is appeal, and that's when people can be like really overzealous, and people that are like recognition seekers and always just want them. They always want you to point out the good stuff about them, and that times and people like that can really miss out on important information. Next, in recognizing perception is a thing called selective perception, and so it can be used. Say you're attracted to someone in the workplace. If it's a subordinate, usually this happens. If you're attracted to someone, you ignore and you neglect all the bad qualities about them, and only focus on the good. Or it could be Anand says that, and then it could be a reversal where if you dislike something, you ignore all the good things they do, and you just point out all the bad things that they've been doing. So transitioning into now taking that recognized perception and applying it in the workplace in an appropriate way. People can perceive other people, object, events in all sorts of different ways, and some of them are acceptable and some of them are not. For example, stereotyping is not acceptable, Anand says, in the workplace. Usually it's when you take an aspect of someone, a certain characteristic, and you apply it to an entire group of people. Usually you can see this in people applying stereotypes to gender and ethnic groups. Another way that perception is not appropriate in the workplace is during stressful conversations or difficult conversations with colleagues. You can see where they take perception in the wrong way. So if they're easily interfered by their past perceptions of someone, or get very aggressive and defensive and use a lot of emotion. Week says that you should not do that when having a stressful conversation. And then Heathfield says that you, in these situations, that you need to be nice and calm and collective when dealing with these people, and not let other perceptions of them that you may have had before interfere with that. Gladly enough, Decay did a study and saw that 44.7% of people that he surveyed have had training in dealing with difficult conversations. They've had communications training. But transitioning into ways of like good perception is some people say to be friendly. Mackenzie says be friendly and be trusting in your work colleagues, and that can build a healthy relationship. And to bring up topics that you may not like but they like, just to get along with them better. And then Anand says that if you know someone that if they like to drink a little bit of alcohol or they like to go for coffee, to ask them out for a drink or coffee to make that relationship better. In conclusion, after defining what perception is through the 5 stages and recognizing perception, trying not to be stereotypical or using the 4 ears to know exactly what they're trying to get across and what you can perceive, and then lastly, how to use that effectively in the workplace. With all the different channels and of ways of perceiving things, it's amazing that we really don't offend and stereotype people all the time. And I think that with all these things, you can learn how to be an effective communicator in the workplace and have a healthy relationship with your colleagues.